Listen closely, because what slipped out of those walls was never meant to breathe Roman air. One sentence, 7 letters of fire, escaped the apostolic palace and turned a city of stone into a living storm. I cannot obey. Not shouted, not staged, trembled. And once it escaped, nothing, no marble, no ritual, no gate, could hold it back. You feel it already, don't you? The hush before thunder, the breath that won't quite leave your chest. Because if that sentence is true, then everything is now at stake. Everything. The Vatican breathes order, eats silence, drinks obedience. Centuries of it. Disciplined, measured, beautifully unyielding. But tonight, the air is different. Doors close. Footsteps gather. A summons, no press, no diplomats, scarlet around white, a gravity you can hear. The room is grand, heavy, almost breathing on its own. Frescoes watching. Chandeliers spilling long shadows over marble like spilled gold and glass. And then, the voice, steady, deliberate. My brothers, we are at a crossroads. It doesn't echo. It pierces. Truth over comfort, cross over cushion, duty over applause. Heads bow, faces tighten. Some nod, some swallow. Some stare at the floor because the floor is safer than a future you can't control. You can feel the question coming before it has a name, and when it arrives, it lands like iron. Before God, can you obey, not me, but Christ? When the world mocks, when the weight crushes, silence stretches until it screams. A tide of murmured, "Yes, Holy Father, yes," begins to rise, and then, all at once, the tide breaks backwards. I cannot obey. Quiet, unmistakable, a match in a cathedral. Heads snap up, eyes widen, time stumbles. The name arrives like a bell in fog. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Trembling, rosary cutting crescent moons into his palm. Eyes lowered, yet firm. Not blindly, he manages. Not without conscience. If obedience demands silence while my soul cries out, then I must answer my soul. The room doesn't explode, it shatters. Gasps, accusations, prayers, disbelief, fury, unity, ripped like cloth. And across the room, white, still unreadable, the Pope's face becomes a mirror that offers nothing and demands everything. A line, unseen until now, has been crossed. And from the moment it's crossed, there is no going back. Only through. What happens next moves faster than truth and slower than rumor. Both at once. By dawn, the corridors whisper. By noon, the headlines harden. By evening, the chant has a rhythm and a heartbeat. Some hear rebellion, others hear prophecy. One sentence becomes 2 cities. St. Peter's Square swells, candles, banners, tears, obedience to Christ alone from one side, stand with the Pope from the other. 2 choirs, 1 church, thunder against thunder, or is it thunder with thunder? It's hard to tell when you're standing under the dome and the sky sounds like a soul in labor. Inside, Tagle stays small, quarters dark, knees sore, rosary warm from too much holding. Lord, I did not seek to wound. Let them see you, not me. Outside, the chant climbs the walls like ivy set on fire. Inside, counsel comes like rain in a drought and feels like flood anyway. Speak, they urge the Pope. Condemn, clarify, control the blaze. But he knows blazes that begin in souls can't be controlled by hoses of policy. If I speak, he murmurs, they will take it as judgment. If I stay silent, they will call it weakness. Truth is neither judgment nor weakness. Truth is Christ. He waits, and waiting, tonight, feels like standing on a wire stretched over centuries. Day 4, and the square learns a single sentence that could move mountains. Let him speak. It becomes the drumline of Rome. Let him speak, until even stone remembers it has ears. Tagle hears it through the door, through the beads, through his bloodstream. Each syllable cuts and heals, heals and cuts. Lord, I didn't mean for this, he whispers. Show me what to do. And as the sun drops behind Bernini's arms, the summons comes. The Pope's study. Light low, a face grooved by sleepless fidelity. Luis, the voice says gently, the people will not leave. If you stay silent, they will invent your words. If you speak, speak for Christ, not for yourself. Holy Father, he breathes, if I defend myself, they'll call it pride. If I confess weakness, they'll call it rebellion. What words are left to me? The hand rests on his shoulder. Human, heavy, kind. Then don't speak for Luis. Speak for him. Morning breaks like a curtain torn open. The balcony doors move. The roar surges, then collapses into a silence so complete it hums. Tagle steps into the light, pale, sleepless, shoulders bearing more than fabric, rosary trembling, pulse counting each bead. He raises his hand, and the square, tens of thousands strong, becomes a single held breath. You want to know why I said it, he begins. I did not mean rebellion. I meant this. Obedience without conscience is not obedience. If my lips obey while my soul says no, then I lie to God. I trembled that night, not because I reject the Pope, but because I feared my own weakness. It lands, heavy, honest. He lifts the beads high. Do not chant my name. Don't lift my face. Lift the name that matters. One voice, Christus, then another, Christus, then 1,000, Christus. And in the threshold's shadow, a hand appears on his shoulder again. The cameras find it. The world translates it. Some call it absolution, others control. But anyone with a heart left in their chest understands. This is unity that hurts and heals at the same time. Then comes the loop, the 7-second clip that refuses context and chases outrage. I cannot obey, everywhere, again and again, until meaning bends under repetition. Two realities harden like plaster. In one, he's penitent, conscience under Christ, humility over ego. In the other, he's a banner for resistance that refuses to lower, no matter who asks. Manila doesn't sleep. Vigils become marches. Prayers become arguments that sound like love fighting fear. A child sends a drawing of a balcony and a heart labeled, "For Jesus." Another envelope carries 3 shaking words. You spoke, for me. And somewhere online, arrows point at the Pope's brow to prove a frown that lasted one frame that must mean everything. Rumors prefer oxygen to accuracy. Tonight, there's plenty of air. Inside, the pressure becomes weather. Walls hold history, but even walls ache. Define obedience, some demand. A note, a decree, a line we won't cross. Paper, others warn, burns faster than wood. If we move, we break, a senior voice mutters. If we stay still, we rot. Between breaking and rotting, there has to be a third way. Right? The Pope returns to the simplest words. Pax. Orate. Peace. Pray. Small syllables, enormous weight. Small things sometimes seed forests, unless, of course, rain keeps them from light. Which will it be? Wait, and you will know. Rush, and you will think you knew. Night flickers. Lamps dip. Someone swears the bells rang one extra time. Heaven counting, maybe. Plans form, fog-like. Another gathering. Quiet, early, decisive, without drama. Paul VI Hall at dawn. No music, no pilgrims, just fatigue and fidelity sitting side by side like brothers who forgot how to sleep. The Pope does not choose the tall chair. He chooses a plain wooden seat placed beside it, deliberately lower, defiantly simple. "We're here," he says, "because one sentence shook the world." He speaks it out loud. "I cannot obey," and the hall flinches like a body remembering exactly where it was wounded. "Luis," he says at last, "you spoke it. Today, speak for Christ." That walk to the front? It's not steps on stone. It's a soul crossing a storm. Tagle turns. The beads are not props. They are anchors. "Brothers," he says, voice soft but carrying, "I'm not proud of the words. They are heavy. I carry them with shame, but I cannot retract honesty. If obedience has no soul, it's a lie, and lying to God is worse than trembling before men." Faces change. Some nod slowly through wet eyes. Some harden like doors. Some stay unreadable, mystery wearing red. The Pope moves to his side, hand on shoulder again, not performance, promise. Obedience without prayer is tyranny. Conscience without prayer is chaos. The Church cannot live on either. The line rings like a bell and refuses to stop. Inside, silence becomes an altar. Outside, rumor becomes a parade. By the time robes whisper back across marble, the square has doubled, banners sharpened into statements. Conscience is not disobedience. Obedience is Christ. Two choirs, one storm. Clips loop, commentators point. The same frames, rewritten 100 ways. Manila's bells answer Rome's bells. Somewhere in the echo, an entire generation hears church language for the first time like it's a dare. Tagle returns to his small room. The world keeps slipping under the door. He holds a child's drawing in one hand, a threat with no signature in the other. He doesn't choose one to keep. He puts both beneath the crucifix because the Church is both, and only Christ can hold what we can't. And then, without cameras, without choreography, two men meet, not to win, to understand. Words, yes. Tears, a little. Laughter, small and surprised. The kind that arrives when love refuses to take offense and truth refuses to be a hammer. Storms, it seems, can become classrooms, if you refuse to sleep, through thunder. Outside, the square invents its own liturgy. Kyrie, silence, candle, waiting for windows. Inside, the simplest command begins to move like a low tide across the world. Fast, pray, listen. In kitchens at 6 in the morning, on bus rides at midnight, in monasteries that never learned how to stop. Hope begins to hum, not cheap, not loud, steady. Days pass that don't look like victory. They look like obedience, the hard kind, the cruciform kind. Bishops risk criticism to guide with tenderness. Priests preach with fewer adjectives and more truth. Confession lines thicken. Friends forgive. Enemies with gritted teeth and wet eyes. The square keeps coming. More candles than signs now, more rosaries than slogans. Kneelers lower like a synchronized breath. Unity doesn't shout. It endures. And endurance tonight starts to look beautiful. Does that mean the mystery is gone? No. Mystery remains, because faith without mystery becomes a slogan, and slogans are cheap. Christ is not cheap. He is costly. He is the cross, and obedience to him will always feel like stepping into night with only a name for light. Step anyway. Step together. Return to the sentence, that impossible sentence, and watch it get baptized right in front of you. I cannot obey becomes I will not obey anything that hides him. That is not rebellion. That is fidelity, with "e'en a scar." Love with a backbone. The kind of obedience that frightens tyrants and steadies saints. And then, one more time, the balcony opens. The sky is bruised purple. The air tastes like prayer. The Pope steps out, pale, exhausted, unyielding. Beside him, in shadow, Tagle, head bowed, beads glinting. The voice carries, calm, strong. You have heard words that shook you. Words alone are not truth. Truth belongs to Christ. Yes, he said, I cannot obey. He trembled. He did not speak against me, nor against the church. He spoke against blind obedience without prayer. For this, I do not condemn him. I thank him. Gasps, hands over mouths. And then, firm, fatherly, stop chanting our names. Chant only the name. The square becomes a single syllable multiplied by thousands. Christus, Christus, Christus. Tears make the candles shine bigger. A blessing cuts the air. The sign of the cross over a restless sea that has, somehow, learned how to be still. Inside, a whisper the microphones miss. You trembled for the church, the Pope tells him. Tonight, they trembled with you. That is not disobedience. That is grace. And grace is the surprise no strategist can script. It's the twist no headline can own. It's the moment a wound looks cleaner, though the scar is not yet finished. The world had asked for clarity, as if truth were a product on a shelf. Heaven gave a person. Truth with a face. Look at him long enough, and no clip, no chant, no sentence will own you again. So listen, really listen, because the next word hasn't been spoken yet. When it comes, it won't be born of anger or fear. It will be born of prayer. From men who learn to tremble together, then stand. From a people who learn to trade names for a name, and mean it. Until then, fast, pray, listen, forgive, even when your fists remember. Light a candle for someone you can't stand and call that small flame love. This is how storms end. Not with applause, but with mercy that keeps showing up. Again. 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 And if the world roars tomorrow, if another headline demands, pick a side now. Remember this. Obedience without prayer becomes tyranny. Conscience without prayer becomes chaos. Prayer turns both into love. Hold that like a rosary. Say it like a creed. Live it like a vow. Because somewhere, behind some door, another meeting will begin. Unplanned, urgent, holy, and when it does, the church will hold her breath and breathe again. Together. What unfolded next was not politics, not ceremony. It was spiritual warfare, clothed in scarlet and white. Rome itself seemed to tremble, not from earthquakes, but from the clash of unseen forces. Inside the marble halls of the Vatican, you could feel it, like two invisible armies pressing against the same walls, one of light, one of shadow, and in the middle, the Church, the bride of Christ, trembling between fidelity and fracture. Some say it was only men debating conscience, but anyone with eyes to see knew. The moment Cardinal Tagle said, I cannot obey, the heavens shuddered. Angels leaned closer. Demons laughed in corridors unseen. For obedience is the weapon of saints, and also the chain of slaves. Misused, it breaks the bride. Purified, it crowns her. That night, every rosary bead, every candle flame, every whispered prayer in St. Peter's Square became a soldier in a war most of the world could not see. The Pope waited, but factions did not wait. Whispers darted like daggers in hidden corridors. Some cardinals spoke of schism, of a church splitting, like an old garment. Others spoke of reform, of conscience elevated above command. Between them lay the cross, wood that cuts both flesh and pride. And while Rome argued, while news anchors speculated, while pilgrims shouted into the night, something older than the papacy itself was stirring. A purification, the bride of Christ being pressed in the winepress of the Lamb. But here is the terrifying twist. The enemy does not fight from outside anymore. The enemy is within. Secret factions inside the Vatican, some cloaked in the language of fidelity, others cloaked in the language of freedom, each one pulling, twisting, reshaping. One whispers, "Obey blindly, even if it damns your soul." Another whispers, "Follow conscience, even if it tears the bride apart." And in the middle, Christ himself waits to see who still remembers that he is not a slogan, not a faction, not a compromise. He is the living King. The bells toll at midnight. The crowd outside St. Peter's swears they heard not 12, but 13. A warning, a heavenly count, a sign that time itself is shortening. Pilgrims cry, reporters laugh, but the faithful, those with trembling hearts, know what it means. Heaven is speaking. The bride of Christ must pass through fire. The papacy itself must walk into Gethsemane. And then, the shocking moment no one expected. As Tagle prayed alone in his quarters, clutching his rosary till blood welled in his palm, a gust of wind blew his candle out, though the windows were closed. He lifted his head, and in the silence he heard it. Not with ears, with soul. A voice, ancient, piercing. The bride will be purified. The shepherd will be struck. The sheep will scatter, and only those who cling to the cross will endure. Meanwhile, in the Apostolic Palace, Pope Leo XIII wrote only 3 words in his journal. "The hour has come." He closed it, locked it, left it on his desk. That night he did not sleep. He knelt, old knees on hard stone, and whispered the prayer no cameras would ever hear. "Lord, let me decrease. Let the papacy decrease. Let Christ alone remain." And here is the epic end no one could have thought of. When dawn broke, Rome expected a papal speech, a condemnation, a clarification. But the balcony doors did not open. Instead, the great bells of St. Peter's rang on their own. Not 12, not 13, 14, the number of the Pope, the number of the cross. And as the bells tolled, the sky over the Vatican split with light, gold, crimson, white, as if heaven itself was declaring war over the bride. Crowds fell to their knees. Some screamed, some wept, some lifted their rosaries to the sky. And in that moment everyone knew the battle for the Church was no longer in the chamber of cardinals. It was cosmic, apocalyptic, divine. The purification of the bride of Christ had begun. The Church is trembling. The papacy is bleeding. The bride is entering fire. And when she emerges, she will not be the same. This is only the beginning.